coming tonight. I'm just going to kick this off. I'm supposed to welcome you, and we want to do that. We've got some really interesting investment options. I think you're going to see some things like hopefully you've never seen before. I know several of you are quite familiar with oil investments, but in fact, this is primarily about the Blubox Energy, but then Lloyd is also going to stay over, and anyone that's interested, talk about some oil options, because they've got a 14-well program that's going to be kicking off here in the next couple of weeks that I think you'll find very interesting. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lloyd Richards. Lloyd is going to come up here, and I'll just quickly say how I got started on this. I was in Las Vegas in February. It was my birthday, and a broker friend of mine who had trying to get me interested in some oil well deals said, "Oh, Tom, if you're going to be in Las Vegas, you need to go by and talk with these people at Ranchers up there, a guy named Lloyd Richards." And I said, "Well, I'll have a little free time." So he got me an appointment set up, and I went over and met with Lloyd and met Alan and several of the people, and boy, some really fascinating oil deals. And this is the guru of oil in Colorado, as you're going to find out in just a minute. And we're kind of wrapping up. He was finding out a little bit about me and my background. I was in the electric utility business, director of finance for Texas Utilities, my first career. He said, "Well, Tom, if you're an energy guy, you might be interested in this Blubox operation that we're cranking up here, and things are going real well, and you might be interested in investing in that." So we took another hour or so, and he told me about Blubox. Came home, did some more research, went to Colorado. I wanted to see this myself because I'd met him in his Las Vegas office. And I tell you what, and within a couple of weeks, I was one of the major investors in Blubox Energy. So I can say firsthand that it's a very fascinating and what we think is going to be a very profitable investment. So with that, let's get into it. Lloyd Richards.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, folks. My name is Lloyd Richards. I've been in the oil and gas business for 35 years or so. Been responsible for acquiring close to 1 million acres of land in Colorado to drill and farm outs with Amoco, Kerr-McGee, and other major companies, and responsible for drilling just about 880 wells in Colorado and 200 or 300 in Wyoming, Kansas. And oil is really my business, and I'm more of an oil man than an electric man or whatever you want to call it, Blubox. But we put a drilling program together, and it calls for drilling 14 wells, and there was no pipeline. And that's the major problem in Colorado. There's just not pipelines. And so when you drill a well, if there's no pipeline, you have to shut it in. So you go out and spend $1,200,000 drill a well, and you cap it, because you cannot flare in Colorado or vent in the atmosphere. There's been a law on the books in Colorado for years, but it was never enforced. But they passed a new law that's going to enforce it January 2014. And I believe the fine is $15,000 a day for flaring a well or venting, and can increase, I've heard, up to $25,000 a day. So that's going to pretty much stop it. So the biggest problem is no pipelines. And the pipeline company up there, we met with considerable times, and they just do not have the money to build pipelines. The price of natural gas is too low, so there's no money in it. And pipeline construction is pretty much stopped. We have a map here on the wall that shows where they're at. And you can see it after the meeting there at right now, where there's just about 29 major companies drilling wells. There's no pipelines, so they drill them, they shut them down. And up there drilling them and shutting them down is Shell Oil and Mobil and Chevron. All the majors are up there. It's the hottest drilling area in the entire country. In fact, Colorado is #1. People think you ski up there, but oil is the biggest business in Colorado. It's the whole northeast corner of the state is oil. But anyway, getting back to what we're doing, we put the oil well program together for 14 wells, and the oil line to transport the gas was almost 2 miles away. So I went to DCP Midstream, which is the gas production company, and we got a contract, but they told me it would be a year before they could get to us. So we went along with it, and then about a year later, they asked us for another year and a half to postpone it because they didn't have the money to run pipelines. And didn't need the gas is the biggest thing. There's been so much natural gas discovered in the United States, there's no need for Colorado gas. And even though it is super clean, it's 999 fine gas. It's no water, no dirt, no nothing in it. It's excellent gas, but there's just no need. So this new law stops flaring, which then locks up the natural gas. There's nowhere to go. In our 14-well program, we could see we could not produce them because of lack of pipeline. So we got some ideas. One of our associates told us about a system to create electricity, and that's been around 20 years. Just no one ever put it together. We went and met with a company in Kentucky that put one together, but it was really not legitimate, and it was way too expensive. Theirs was about $1.2 million. We've got cost down on ours about $195,000. And ours was portable. Theirs was in a railroad car that you could never move. And it was a big, ugly, obscene thing that the farmers and ranchers wouldn't allow on their property anyway. So we've got it down by going to Caterpillar, and we got it down to the size of about 11 feet, I think 14,000 pounds. And Steve can correct me if I'm wrong there. And but it's totally portable. And these wells in Colorado, they decline rapidly. You go in and you might make 400,000 feet a day the first 3-4 months, and within a year it's down to 100,000 MCF a day, but it's producing oil, so we still drill them. But there's not enough gas to justify a big, expensive machine to convert electricity. So we've got the Blubox put together, and it's totally portable. We can hook it up to a well and be producing electricity in one day. We can take it away and move it to another well. If we have a very large well, we might put 2 or 3 boxes on one well. It doesn't make any difference because we just make more electricity. But being totally portable and the fact that we can add to it and take away without a big cash investment makes sense compared to what other systems are out there. We're the first ones that I know of or ever heard of that have gone out commercially and signed up contracts to sell it to utility companies. And we've been doing that for the last 6-7 months. Right now we have 3 utility companies totally confirmed with it. We have 3 pending, and I'm talking to 3 new ones now. There's 9 utility companies in Colorado that are in the gas zone and that would need electricity. And by law in Colorado, they have to buy 5% from local producers. Well, that's us. 5% is a humongous number, especially when you've got 9, 10, 12 utility companies. And there's 14 utility companies in Colorado that we could work with. It takes months and months to get it all done, but eventually we plan to market to all 14. And so far, the utility companies accept us very happily. We've had no resistance whatsoever. It solves their problem too. They don't have to fool with windmills that work 40% of the time and solar that works maybe 50% of the time. We can deliver electricity 95% of the time. And this is what they like, because we're not going to be surging and causing problems with their transformers by electricity going in and out and not being consistent. With the Caterpillar engine, I think we've committed to no less than 70% utilities, and we expect to deliver 90% of the time, up to 95. So it's quite profitable, makes a lot of sense. The utility companies really like it. We've got the cost down where it's practical. If one well dropped from 100,000 MCF down to 20, we could simply move our box off. It'd take one day and move it to another well. So we're not locked in with heavy equipment and over-equipped and underutilized. So we've eliminated, we think, all the problems there are. And with the power companies signing up very easy, it makes a lot of sense. So we're just now, in fact, this is the first meeting we had with any outside people to talk to about this. And we're moving fast, building a company. We signed a contract with a securities firm here in Dallas called Esposito Securities, and Jared, the manager, is here. And that's to raise $50 million for Blubox over the next months. It could take us 6 months to get it done, 8 months. It really doesn't matter. We don't need that much money at a time, and we've worked it out where they could pay us in increments of $5 million at a time, which is more than ample, because we can only build so many to start with, and we can only get so many installed. The market is humongous. We have 3,700 shut-in wells in Colorado at the last report, and that was April. They're drilling close to 1,000 wells a month, and they're shutting in about a third of them. So that number is growing to 200 or 300 wells every month. We'll never be able to catch up with equipment. It'd be impossible as fast as they're drilling and shutting them in. There's just no way around it. When the new law starts enforcement with $15,000 fines, the people are going to stop flaring. You go out there today, there's probably 1,000 wells flaring, but that'll all stop. Even Mobil Oil, they don't want to fine $15,000 a day, you know. And then I think it can increase to $25,000, but I'm not real sure of that, but that's what I've been told. So the Blubox makes a whole lot of sense. It is very practical, economical. I think once we get going, we're working with Caterpillar, we start ordering in size. I'm sure we can get the box down another $25,000, $30,000. Don't know that for a fact yet, but I'm sure we can. And we have signed up contractors. Everybody's an independent contractor. We have no employees. We don't want employees. We want all contractors in the environment today. So we'll have all independent contractors. We'll oversee all operations, but we won't have laborers. So it's pretty well set up to go just as is. We have lined up a company to install the equipment for us. Caterpillar will deliver it as part of their agreement with us. They'll deliver it and install the first 6, and after the first 6, we take it over. So by then, we're in position to go with them. So that's really about it. But basically, the equipment is very sensible. It's a very logical thing to do. It's very practical, and it's a great need. I think it's going to be a humongous success. I know my 35 years in there, I've never seen anything like this that'll work this easy, this economically.
What percentage of those 3,700 wells are close enough proximity to transmission lines?
Probably 80%. Probably 80%.
Who pays for the lateral lines from the transmission?
We do. So what we'll do is we'll just hook up the wells that are close to the lines. And then once we get established well, we'll go further out, but we'll run a PVC line from the well to our Blubox. We'll put the Blubox by the pole, run the gas line to the Blubox. It'll be a lot cheaper than running power lines. They gave me a quote of $18,000 a quarter mile, and that includes a transformer. So if you start going a great distance, it's a lot better to run PVC and take the gas to the telephone pole. And that's what we're going to do.
I guess you can run multiple wells to it then, too.
Yeah, the best thing, and we're going to start out, we'll have multiple wells. We'll have the boxes all around, clusters, and keep overhead down.
You get any accelerated depreciation on these things?
I'm sure we do. I'm not an accountant, but I'm sure there is. I'd have to ask our CFO. Maybe Paul might be able to tell you that. The president of the company, he may have a lot better handle on that. There's got to be. It's got to be depreciation.
Is there any competition? Is anybody else manufacturing?
We don't know of anybody at this point. None of the companies we've talked to have known anybody. The cat people have run into anybody. The power companies haven't been approached by anybody. We've probably got a good year and a half ahead of the pack, and they will be coming. It's been talked about for years. Just no one's ever done it, especially in this type of a size. The railroad box doesn't work.
Do you have an exclusive agreement with Caterpillar?
Caterpillar for 5 years, and it's renewable. We have contracts with the utility companies for 5 years, renewable. That doesn't stop anybody from Texas to doing them.
Are you paying the producers for the gas?
No, we work it out with the producers where they give us the gas for free, which then allows them to produce oil. So they're trading $4 gas for $95 oil, so it's a real no-brainer. Nobody's objected at all. Yeah. It's petty cash to them when you're selling oil for $95 a barrel. So it's cost them, what, 2%, 4%. So there's been no resistance there. Most of these wells have no pipelines. So what are they going to do with the gas? If you, on the map here, this is Greeley, Colorado right here, and this would be about 8 miles north of Greeley. There's no pipelines. All the drilling up here is all through here, all the way up to Wyoming border. So we've gone up to Wyoming and border there and signed up, utility comes up there. They've got all the contracts. I've talked to them all as late as yesterday. 2 of them have agreed. It's in the process with their attorneys, reviewing the contracts. There's just no reason for anybody to say no. It's good for everybody. We sell to the utility companies a penny cheaper than they buy from the power company, sometimes 2 cents.
Why would somebody drill a well they know they're going to shut in?
That's a good question. We all ask that, but the one thing they do is you drill this well. And it's going to cost you about $1 million. But with the recoverable reserves that you can certify, the well's going to be worth somewhere between 20 and 25 million. So they're booking assets, recoverable in the ground reserves. But so Shell Oils, they can shut a well in. They don't care. They're making so much off the gas stations and selling oil. They can shut them in. And Mobil and Amoco, they're all up there. And they're shutting them in. The small guys, they can't do that. Like me, I couldn't do it. So we put our 14-well program on hold until the Blubox came around, and the Blubox was designed for our 14 wells first. We were going to make that kind of a showplace with 14 wells, 14 Bluboxes. But why they continue to drill, it's amazing. But it's tax dollars. They're building reserves. They're building assets. So if you got that kind of money, why not? What are they going to do with it? It's much better than putting the bank drawing 2%, 1%. A well will normally book out about 20 million, 22 million in the ground recoverable reserves, certified. And that's pretty standard up there. That's got to be their reason. It's the only one I can think of.
Can we talk a little bit about the percentage of times that the companies up there are hitting oil? I mean, it's just fascinating to me.
It's according to the state, they put out a notice that the state is 98.9%. You just don't get a dry hole. It's the pay zone there is 147 miles long, about 45 miles wide, and Ray Charles could go in there and drill a well. It's just that easy.
They don't drill for oil anymore, they mine.
And our spacing, started out at 180 acres years ago, and then it went to 120, and then 80, and now it's 40, and half of the zone has been reduced to 20. So these wells are climbing. We went up there in '78. I had a little company called Unio, and we drilled the first Codell wells up there. We drilled 30 before anybody came in. There's now 28,000 of them. So, and we did that in Yuma, Colorado, and we did the same thing on a Kerr McGee farm out. We went in and drilled 125 total, and there's now 19,000. And we did that down.
Decreasing the spacing instead of increasing it with this horizontal drilling.
Was what?
Why are they decreasing? What's the thought behind decreasing the spacing when we've got the technology to drill 2 miles out in horizontal formations?
Well, it's basically when you frack a well, it goes out 7 acres to 9 acres. So if you got 40 acres.
That's without the horizontal drilling, right? They not allow the horizontal drilling?
Well, most of the drilling is on 40-acre spacing, 80 acres. If you're drilling horizontal, it's 2 miles or 1 mile. And it's very expensive. And horizontal is now proven to be not such a hot idea. Because it's a 20% failure. Well, that's a hell of a lot of money. And a vertical well, you're going to hit it 99.9. So there are a lot of the companies are going back to verticals already. It's very expensive. They'll drill 2 miles for about $12 million. Half of that's just for a frack. So, and if something goes wrong, you just lost $12 million. So you can drill 12 horizontals and have the same results. And now we're going to be going to 20-acre spacing, probably late summer, early fall. And a frack only goes out 7 acres, so why leave all that oil behind? Yeah. Yep. Any other questions? I'll let that.
Quickly, if I have a well that's down to 100 low producing of gas, I'm still getting oil out of it, and the gas production's not high enough for you to justify a Blubox. Can you just, I mean, would you just pick up and pull out, or would you negotiate with that well and say, you need to pay us to buy your gas from you?
Well, we could do that, but what they would do now is they'll go back and refrac it, and we never started refracking until 3 years ago. You frack a well and you stimulate this ground, but the well peters out in 5 years. So now you go back and refrac them 5 years later, so you go back to probably 80% of production. And then you can do it a third time, come back and do it and bring it right back up.
How long do you expect a Blubox to stay in a well?
3 or 4 years. And then it'll be a smaller box. We can make the box, you could have 1 million cubic feet, and ours is starting out as 42 cubic feet. So we're starting them out small because we could put multiple boxes on a well and not overbuild.
Is there any variation in BTU content of these gas wells, and does that have any effect on the operation of the engine that drives the generator?
It doesn't yet, but what we're trying to do next is we're putting a machine together to take out the propane, the butane as a separate product. There's quite a bit of propane, quite a bit of butane, and that's another nice product. It sells for $3.50 a gallon. Butane especially is a very good product. Right now it just gets burned up, whether flaring or it goes into our Blubox.
Exhaust out of these things. You ever had a problem with EPA on the exhaust?
No. It's run by natural gas. It's a natural gas engine. And Mr. Steve Brannon's here. He'll explain the technical side of it. He's an engineer with a Caterpillar company. I'm not much of a mechanical guy. But it's the way of the future. Everywhere you read, they talk about natural gas will produce 80% of electricity over time. Windmills are a total failure. You know, they just don't run long enough. You know, and you spend $1 million to build one, and you run 50% of the time or 40, normal. And even solar, it just doesn't work enough yet. In 20 years, they claim it will, but it's a long ways away. By then, we won't need it. This Blubox system will take over. It's going to be much bigger than what we're doing. We're just starting out with it. But we've got a good 10, 15-year run, and where we're at in Colorado is very unusual. All the oil is produced by natural gas. There's not a pump jack for miles. You know, you go to Texas, Oklahoma, you see pump jacks everywhere. We don't have any. And when a well depletes down to 6, 7 barrels a day, then the Blubox wouldn't function either. But they put other equipment on it to keep it running. But when the well gets that low, it has to be a refractor, shut it in. And we have an awful lot of shut-in wells. And it's not only that, the Blubox will work, the gas companies like DCP, they don't want any more gas. The caverns are full, all the pipelines are full. So what they do is they just raise the line pressure from 100 to 400, and we can't get in because we can only get under 200 pressure, 200 pounds. So all they do is raise the pressure. We're shut out. Their contract says they must buy our gas, so they're still doing it. So they get by on the contract by raising the pressure and not buying very much gas. So the producers are shut down. We're only producing 40% of the time now. So that's 60% of the oil we're not getting. And the gas companies can't help it. There's just nowhere to go. Besides using it for your water heater and your gas stove, today, what are you going to use it for? There's very, very little. There's no need for all the gas we have in this country. All right, let me bring up Tim here. He can go into a lot of this here with you. Tim is Secretary of Blubox. Tim Rather.
Thanks, Lloyd. My name's Tim Mather, civil engineer by trade. I actually create a lot of these maps that we're looking at. I'm licensed, not in Texas, but Colorado, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wyoming. And I was in the ER last night because I broke my pinky. So I'm the clumsy techie guy. I was trying. Anyway, one of the other things that's going on, and you've probably been reading about it in the news. Can you hear me okay, or do I need the mic? Mic?
Do the mic, I think it picks it up better
Okay.
in video.
We're in kind of a transition in regulatory environment throughout the U.S. and particularly in Colorado. I think something came out in the news this week about the president having this new initiative to make coal-fired power plants more efficient and cleaner, and which ultimately is going to shut them down. And I think what he has in his back pocket is we have a great opportunity in this country because we have a ton of natural gas, and he wants to promote that. And so does the state of Colorado. With the help of our legal staff, we're working with the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, which is essentially the EPA of Colorado, or the DEQ, I think in Texas. Maybe it's the DEQ down here. But they regulate water and air and land. And their CDPHE is in the process of introducing a whole bunch of new regulations that are specific to oil and gas production in the state. Historically, I think the E&P companies have been unhindered. They've developed unhindered. There hasn't been a lot of regulations in the state up to this point. Colorado has a balance of being a pretty state to go and ski and hike and look at the scenery and mountains, but very few people know there's a huge oil industry going on in the state. And so I think the state has realized that they need to step in and maybe take a sterner role in regulating oil and gas. And so they have a new revised Regulation 7 coming out that really is going to regulate flaring, for one, in the state. I think this gentleman here asked, why are they drilling wells when they know they can't produce them? Well, as I'll show you, they're producing them. There's a lot of flaring going on in the state. There are certain areas that it's pretty prevalent. I think the larger operators know these regulations are coming, and so they're coming behind with pipelines, but a lot of the smaller operators are not, and they're flaring and venting because there's really no strong arm in the state right now to say, don't do that, or you got to pony up a bunch of money because we caught you doing that. It doesn't exist right now. So this new regulation that's coming out, they're in the process now of soliciting public comment, and that public comment period is coming into a close. And so our legal staff and myself have been visiting with CDPHE regularly to try to figure out where the rule's going, and also give some language to them that they could consider incorporating into this new regulation coming out. This is a public meeting they held in February as a part of this soliciting public comment period, and specifically they identified venting and flaring as a big problem in the state. And they see it essentially as not only an environmental issue, but a huge waste of energy. And they're calling out 60 facilities that are flaring in the state. Well, that's not right. If anybody that's familiar with Weld County knows there's a lot more going on than that, and so does CDPHE. But they present 60. This is the area that they've identified in the state that there's a lot of flaring going on. It's a lot more prevalent than this, believe me. And so what these regulations are trying to do is really clamp down on this wasteful practice of natural gas, and also try to reduce air emissions that are detrimental. And so this rule is calling out right now, and it's a proposed rule that is going to go into effect January 1st of 2014, that is going to restrict flaring of natural gas and require that operators, and the key verbiage here is route gas to gathering lines. And there's going to be, for the first time in the state, strict penalties if they don't route their gas to existing natural gas lines. Then they have to shut them in, and they're sitting on them now, and it's an asset that's not producing. And so this is a real fundamental change in the regulatory environment in the state. That's a real, we see as a huge opportunity for Blubox. There's some other things that this new regulation that's going to go into effect is going to take a look at, and it's what they're calling fugitive emissions coming off gas, oil tanks. They see this as a big problem, and this is another thing that Blubox can address. We can take these vapors, we can route them into our machine. There's valving that burp gas. This regulation is going to prohibit that. Those gases can be routed through our system. And so, you know, we have solutions for a couple of these regulations that are coming down. And I think really ultimately it's an opportunity for these E&P companies to become good stewards, because this new regulation is coming out. The public perception is that there's a lot of energy being wasted, and that these E&P companies could step in. They can incorporate our technology, be a good steward to the environment, and adhere to these new regulations that are coming down. And this is a lot of the buzzwords that are going on you hear about today, but lowering the carbon footprint. Obviously, burning natural gas, I think the carbon footprint is 50% less than burning coal. And ultimately, I think that we're going to see coal go away in this country, burning of coal for fuel or for energy. I guess I'll finish my spiel here. I guess that our attorney and I went into a meeting with CDPHE last week, and this was our second kind of one-on-one meeting with these folks. And we are introducing language and suggesting, and we got favorable response to call out in the regulations that they could route their gas to an existing pipeline or use a generator device to take the gas. And leaving that meeting, John Collians is our attorney, environmental attorney. He said he's never come out of a meeting with a regulatory agency with the response that we got when we introduced that. They think this is a great idea for all the reasons that I mentioned, the environmental issues, and also turning this wasted energy into something that we can use. So we feel pretty strongly that language is going to get incorporated, and it's going to be a huge opportunity for us. So I guess I'll introduce Paul Burns next here. He's our president. Any questions? I'm sorry.
Is the oil and gas industry not challenging this new rule, lobbying against it? I think that
Oh yeah, they are, but they've been lobbying against it for years and years and years, and I think it's gotten to a point in Colorado where the green side of the state, let's say, has said enough is enough. over the past few years, oil and gas production in the state is skyrocketed. Everybody knows it. It's in the media. People are starting to ask, okay, how are we regulating this? And so, you know, now is the time that they're stepping in.
You're the engineer.
Yeah.
I'm sucking in a $3 MCF. How much electricity dollar-wise am I producing with that 1 MCF?
1 MCF?
One, yeah, MCF, 1,000.
One of our units will burn 43 MCF. When that will generate
Per hour or per day?
per day, sorry.
Okay.
And we will produce 200 kilowatts per hour.
So how's that equate to dollars?
Well, we have a negotiated rate for per kilowatt hour, and that rate will increase 3 or 4% a year.
The conversion ratio.
6 cents.
Yeah, 6.5, 7 cents kilowatt hour,
Okay.
and so yeah, you do.
$12 a day.
No, it's more than that.
This will answer your question really easily. So that'll give you it gives you a breakout, kind of what it looks like from a dollars and cents.
So that's 43 MCF per day is 200 kilowatts per day.
Absolutely.
That's per day.
Correct.
Yes.
And you can see they're scalable because you can have multiple units in the product.
So I'm using 1,200 MCF per month, right? So what you're trying to, is my math correct when I sit down and say this? If I'm using 1,200, about 1,200 MCF, right, per month, and if that's at $3, that's $3,600. And you're generating $9,700 worth of gross income. Is that what you're representing, Fred? So you're generating a 3-to-1 by using your box. You're generating on the raw source a value of approximately 2.5, 3 times. So
Generating
there are,
electricity.
so could you afford to buy any of this gas?
That's a very good question. You'd still have to obviously pump it through. I would still.
Well,
Yeah.
no,
No,
economics.
we can make money paying for the gas. Now that's, you know, we don't think we have to.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I just, you know.
Yeah. There's some, I think, markets where if we went into, like the Southwest Colorado, which is kind of a gas area, there's not a lot of oil coming out of there. If we went into that market, we would have to probably come to an agreement to pay for the gas in that market.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, we've looked at that, and yes, we're profitable, just obviously not as profitable. Yeah.
These units are 175,000, 195.
Yeah.
A little over a year and a half payout at 7 cents.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
What's the life expectancy of one of these units?
Well, Steve will talk about that. Yeah, he'll pick that one up. But at that period, we take them off, we overhaul them, and reinstall them.
At what period?
Is it 5 years, Steve? Or?
There's multiple periods, I can go over that.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Anyway, I'll let Paul Burns take this.
Sorry, Paul, I probably.
Oh, no problem, no problem. That's good questions. I certainly appreciate that. Thank you, Tim. My name is Paul Burns. I go into a little short background, how I met Lloyd and the other principal, Alan. About 18 months ago, I made an oil investment in Weld County in Colorado and was curious about the fracking procedure. I don't have any background in oil or gas. This was my initial introduction into oil and gas. I was interested in the fracking, and they had a procedure or a well that they were fracking, so I wanted to see that, and I got acquainted with Lloyd and Alan, the two principals at that time, and kind of one thing led to another. They asked me to join the group, and that was about 18 months ago. And since that time, we've been growing slowly at this point. I guess that's what you do when you start out a company, is you grow slowly and go through that process. Uh, My background is in banking, actually. I am an ag producer in eastern Colorado, working on center pivot sprinklers. This concept of burning natural gas and generating electricity is not new to me. I've been doing that on the farm for 30 years, driving irrigation wells with natural gas engines and generating electricity to propel the sprinklers. So that concept is, I'm real familiar with that process. But this is a different ballgame, certainly, and a different scale. I'm going to have some other comments shortly, but I want to introduce Steve Brandon. Steve is kind of the nuts and bolts type of guy on this. He's an engineer from Elite Energy. We have contracted with Elite Energy to build our units. We have a couple of units in process of being built now. Steve can answer all of those technical questions related to that energy or that engine and that energy production. We met Steve about, I don't know, back in August, I guess, when we first contracted with them. So I'll let Steve tell you the nuts and bolts on this deal, and I'll have a couple of other comments later. So, Steve, thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. I have got some slides I'm going to pull up, and so I'm going to race ahead a little bit so that we kind of stay on focus. My name is Steve Brandon. I work with Elite Energy. Elite Energy is the only OEM authorized by Caterpillar Engines to produce generation equipment outside of Caterpillar's network. We produce distributed generation products, cogeneration products, primarily with gas engines. We do some biodiesel and diesel projects for remote towns in Canada and island opportunities such as Hawaii. Been doing that for about 15 years. A few months ago, Caterpillar Corporate contacted us and asked us to enter into discussions with Blubox, and quite frankly, we became enamored with the idea, just as I'm sure they hope you do as well. We're kind of the third leg on the stool. We've talked tonight about the financial piece, the need to have the oil well customers, and the need to have the agreements with the utilities. Elite Energy is the technical leg. And so what we've been asked to do is to produce the generating equipment. We generally produce generating equipment for dense metropolitan areas. So air emissions in California, South Coast, strictest in the world, we comply with those every day. So any questions we need to go back to about those issues that we asked and were not answered earlier to your satisfaction, we can hit those. This is a picture of the early generation Blubox. We actually produced a Blubox some months ago. It went to a Whole Foods project in New York. We did that to get a product out there and get it tested. We've since changed the design. Obviously, the prototype had some issues with it. We've spent a lot of time with Blubox over the past year studying not only the industry, but also the location. The plateau in Colorado is generally 6,000 feet and up, and so the engines have to operate at high altitude. The temperature range there is really extreme. You can have anything from sub-zero to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and so we had to design this box to accommodate those variables in temperature. There's some unique features with the Blubox that we think are quite interesting, and I'll try to find some find some pictures as we go through this. We have been working with Blubox for some time in the technical side to work with the utilities to get the power from the Blubox equipment into the grid. And you can imagine with a lot of rural electric companies, this is new for them. This is not a concept that they're used to. And so it's been an education process. We've spent years, we've interconnected electrical generating equipment with electrical companies throughout the US, Israel, Italy, various parts of the world. and we have a unique control system. That control system allows us to take hundreds of small generators that are located in multiple locations and look at them, review them, and monitor them as a single generating source. And that's what a utility really wants. So we have an overlay database that controls and runs all these generators like a generating station at one location. And so we've worked with the utilities on that, and they've been very receptive to that. We run extensive maintenance and monitoring programs for generating equipment. Specifically, we use our control system to interrogate that equipment daily, to schedule maintenance so that it's done promptly and not done when it impacts the operation. And one of the unique features, it's not really a brilliant idea, but it certainly is a workable idea. The Blubox, as Lloyd mentioned, was designed to be scalable, modular, portable, and those terms should not be taken lightly. When we studied the wellhead sites, we realized what, and I can tell from the questions, you're also familiar with these wellhead sites. I wasn't that familiar a year ago, but I have become familiar. These sites start out after fracking with a very high level of gas production. Within a few months, it reduces and stabilizes. And so when we designed the Blubox system, we realized that it had to be flexible, had to be scalable. So we designed the modules so that they could be plugged in and utilized and moved to new locations as we expanded locations. And I'll explain, it's a very simple process to do that. We start with a spark-ignited Caterpillar engine that's in a box. It's basically an off-the-shelf, commercially available gas engine, the same kinds of engines that Caterpillar uses or sells to gas compression manufacturers. We couple that with a special generator that's highly efficient, our controls to remotely monitor and operate the system, and we produce a unit that's very quiet because many of these wells are in residential interface areas. So we have the noise level down to about 72 decibels, which is like a pickup truck idling, about that noise level. We've integrated the radiator and other pieces of equipment so that it's a unitary box. There's no outside pieces, and it's plug and play. So we have an electrical utility interface box that's set at the site. Lloyd talked earlier about the electrical drops. We've worked a lot of hours with the utilities to come up with a standard electrical interface. So at a typical well site, they have an electrical drop, but what we'll do is survey each of those sites with the utility, and we've set up a process with those utilities to not only evaluate how much electrical energy we can produce, but also how much they can take at a given location, behind the substation, what types of customer loads they have. And we've developed this process with them carefully to be able to give them the confidence that we can provide the power they need reliably. Lloyd mentioned we were planning on a 95% availability. We actually get well over 97% availability with our Caterpillar engines. They typically need maintenance, and those maintenance intervals are every 1,500 hours. So roughly every 2 months. There's 720 hours in a standard month. So about every 2 months you have to do an oil change and some spark plugs. About 12,000 hours or a year and a half you have to work on the top end of the engine, that's the valves. And then about 40,000 hours you have to work on the bottom end. So a major overhaul. In speaking with the utilities, their primary concern was reliability. They have a few landfills and they have some solar sites that they're really unhappy with. Either a cloud bank comes across and they lose the solar power, or the landfill gas that they're generating electricity from now stops producing energy. And it's really problematic for them because then they have to go out and buy high-priced energy on the spot market. So they want high reliability, and we studied that in detail. And what we came up with was a unit design. What you see in this picture, and I apologize, it's probably difficult to see from where you are. The right-hand unit is actually being loaded onto a hydraulic trailer, much like a dumpster would be. It has hydraulic winch. The electrics are actually designed to be plugged in very easily. So when a unit breaks or needs to have an overhaul, rather than do it in the field and having expensive technicians traipse all over the northeast corner of Colorado. That unit will be brought back to a central location, refurbished, and replaced with a unit that's already been either new or restored. And so that concept is being applied to keep very high reliability numbers that the utilities require for this program. In that way, we can replace one of these in a matter of a couple of hours. So if a unit goes down, we don't have any outage time, and we meet the performa data for a given site. We designed this, as I said, to be scalable and modular. So as that site starts up initially, and as the wells begin to be fracked, we can increase the generators by adding modules. We have a couple of different size modules, and we met with Caterpillar Corporate this past week. They've also got some new engines. They purchased MWM, which is the old Deutz lean burn gas engine line out of Europe, and they're willing to allow us to apply those to this application as well. So we have several engine sizes available to us, and we have some very unique features on this unit that Tim spoke about in brief detail. These units, the tubing on the top is part of an emissions after-treatment system that reduces the air emissions to below South Coast Air Quality Management District, California standards. Colorado today runs about 1 gram per brake horsepower hour as their regulatory level for NOx, and we're about 1/4 of that. So we're significantly less. So this box and this concept has a really good environmental play to it. As has been discussed, one, Colorado and many states have a written initiative to get off the coal dole. Colorado is one of the highest coal producing states, and more than 51% of their electricity is produced by coal. So they have a regulatory initiative to move from coal to other sources. We believe that the regulatory community and the environmental community will back this solution. We believe they'll back it because it makes sense. So we're reducing the emissions. We're getting far better utilization out of the energy as opposed to flaring, or even as opposed to compressing it and putting it in a natural gas pipeline. So we believe that the environmentalists, although the frackivists are very well intent upon stopping oil production in some areas, it's a foregone conclusion that it will occur, and this solution gives them gives the regulators and the politicians an answer to a big problem. As Tim mentioned, there are fugitive gas emissions. So once the gas is percolated out of the ground, we don't use pumps. Once the high pressure gas percolates the oil, the gas is separated and it's run into the engine. When the oil goes into the oil collection tank, there's still a small amount of gas bonded to the oil, and it continues to vent off the tank. So we offer another environmental solution, and that is to take that tank vent and put it into the air intake on the engine so it can be combusted. It's not a significant source of fuel from a standpoint of generating electricity. What it is, though, is a treatment technology to mitigate the gas leaving the top of that tank. And some of the oil wells, especially the remote ones, they use gas pressure to operate pneumatic valves. Instead of running a compressor, they use the high pressure gas to open and close the valves. And when the valves close, they bleed off gas. So that gas could also be introduced into the engine, have it combusted, and then through the catalyst that we have on the top of the engine. The catalyst takes the exhaust from the natural gas engine, and it basically eliminates the NOx, and it turns the carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide, CO2, which we exhale, and water. That's the byproduct of combustion. So it's a very clean solution to burning this. I think the way I look at it is this is a compliant flare. This is a flare that oil producers can use that's legal. And so whether there's an issue over paying for fuel, that's well beyond me. I'm more of a technocrat, but I see it as a compliant fuel, a compliant flare alternative. We also have a future in this, in that I think there's several very optimistic pieces to this going forward. As we looked at it and we said, as a company, do we want to invest in building machine and getting behind Blubox? And we think it makes a lot of sense for these reasons. We're not part of Blubox. They don't have any interest in us, nor do we in them financially. But we believe that it makes sense for these reasons. One, Colorado is moving very aggressively with environmental regulations. I believe once there is a solution, you'll see other states follow suit. So I think what we'll see in the future is that other oil-producing states, once they see a viable solution, they'll treat this as best available control technology under the national or federal environmental regulations. That forces states to have to do something about it. And so that puts us in a good position. We also are working with several companies at Elite that use waste heat to produce energy. Several of those technologies have actually been tested, and we're the packagers or producers for those pieces of equipment as well. So they take the heat that we normally throw away from the engine, the radiator heat, and we turn that into electricity through several means. The first is an organic Rankine cycle machine that boils off a refrigerant with the waste heat. It turns a turbine and makes electricity. And then the latter technology that we're working with, it's going to be slower coming, is a nanotechnology that uses thermal electrons. Take heat on one side, you cool the other side, and you produce electrical energy. So we're working very aggressively with both those technologies to couple those with engines. Why? Because the state of Colorado and many states view that energy then as renewable energy. It's heat, waste heat, that's being converted to energy. And that changes not only the value of the electricity, but it changes the regulatory focus and the environmental focus towards that energy. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity. And we're actually designing these sites with the ability to integrate that technical capability into the sites that we're starting so that we can put a test bed in. Obviously, these are portable. Tracking with the notes here, I'm seeing this presentation first time, just like you guys. So, basically, this is going on a slab. That's really the only site work. Everything else there is removable and movable. So it is an asset. It likely qualifies for accelerated depreciation because it's renewable energy and it's a renewable energy asset. And it's completely movable. So from the standpoint of being a fixed asset or attached to a piece of property or a well installation, it's completely portable. So I'm not a tax accountant, but those facts are the facts, and I'm not qualified to answer any tax questions. This is actually what the unit looks like today. It looks somewhat different than the earlier picture that you saw, and here's why. Our studies of the climatological data in that elevated basin would show that the extremes of temperatures only occur for short periods. And the initial process was to use the fan, just like on the front of your car engine, you have a fan pulling air across the radiator. In a generator, it blows it across the radiator, but it's the same process. Because it's 6,000 feet and above, we had to move a significant amount of air across that radiator, so we had to upsize that. And after we looked at that, the amount of air that we had to move for short periods of time, 3-4 days out of the summer, it was ridiculous to run that much air year-round. So we changed the whole radiator concept to one that has a variable speed fan on it that's electronically controlled so that we only move the amount of air that we need to cool the radiator. And when it's minus 12 up there, the fan obviously won't be running. So it's going to make the system produce more energy. It'll make the system quieter. And frankly, it offers some other unique features. Most of these interface areas where these wellheads are next to agricultural fields. There's a lot of dirt, and engine radiators stand vertically and they tend to collect the dirt. If you put the coil horizontally, as we've done here, the dirt falls out of the bottom and they don't clog and have problems. So we've done a lot of things with the Blubox. We've incorporated seismic isolation under the engine. We've created rails inside the box, which you can sort of see, and rollers on the front of that base so that it can be pulled up onto a trailer and quickly moved so that we don't have downtime, or when major overhauls are needed, we can simply replace the unit with an easy-to-install package. We have a lot of experience at Elite and with Caterpillar on sour gas. We work with, we actually have a subsidiary company called Cow Power, and so we take waste from dairies and make electrical energy through digestion. And so we have to treat that gas as well, and we've got a lot of experience in that. But I need to say that the gas in Colorado, the samples that we've taken initially and run through the Caterpillar program would suggest that the gas is about 1,300 BTUs a cubic foot. So it's got some propane, some isobutane, some pentane. It's mostly methane, so it's actually higher BTU content than pure methane. That isn't a positive. In the future, we can look at stripping the heavies and selling those, but it's also low enough that it doesn't cause anyone concern for the engines. So the engines will operate normally on the gas that we've studied. It's pretty typical, but if we run into sour gas, then we have the technical means to filter that gas. The utility interconnects we've talked about. What we're going to do is we're going to be generating electricity just like a power plant. We're going to be putting it into the grid, though, not at the transmission lines, the big high voltage lines. We're going to be putting it into the secondary branch lines. So we have to work with those utilities to try to integrate our system into theirs. We have, through our remote control system, we have protective relays that in the event the power goes off, the utilities were very concerned that we could electrocute linemen that might be out there working. And so we've agreed on a protective relay strategy that will eliminate any backfeed of power during a power outage. And we've settled on a complete solution for those technologies. Normally we put those in the box, but if I go back to the previous slide, we're actually putting those in that green electrical gear on the left. And the reason is that when we change the equipment, we don't want to have to get those recertified. So those will be assigned to a site for a period of time, approved by the utility. And then if the whole site was to shut down for a reason, we would move that box. I think I've spoken to all the bullets that are there, and I apologize that I'm not really following the slides. I'm just kind of talking from my knowledge, and I wasn't really focusing on the slides. I may have missed something. So that's kind of the overview technically of how we plan to approach it. There will be different size units. Those different size units will be able to be matched to the gas flow, and we can put multiple units at one site, and as the gas diminishes, we can reduce that to singular units, and there will come a time when that site is no longer financially viable. But the equipment goes on to the next site. Life cycle on a Caterpillar engine is 15 years. However, the way we've set the program up, at 12,000 hours, you're going to do the top end. At 40,000 hours, you're going to do the bottom end. Caterpillar engines are designed with all replaceable wearing surfaces. So the cylinders and the bearings and the valve guides and all these little nitinoids that are inside there, they're all replaceable. So if you came to that engine on a 40,000 hour interval, everything in there would be new. If you came to the engine on a 39,000 hour period, everything would need to be new. So the engine is still viable. These engines have been made for many years by Caterpillar, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of them out in the oil patch, compressing gas, in cogeneration applications and gas applications throughout the world. So they're highly supportable, and that's why we work with Caterpillar. We, as I said, are the only OEM that can get those loose engines. We work with Caterpillar. We're hopeful to be their packager for the European engines they just purchased. And we do that. We've worked with every engine manufacturer we know of. Cummins, Guascor, MAN, John Deere, you name it. And we've never had the reliability out of any of those engines that we get from the Caterpillar products. So this job is about reliability. The first cost is higher on the Caterpillar products. There are certainly cheaper engines available, People say you get what you pay for. I say you rarely get what you pay for, but you never get more. And with Caterpillar engines, we've had great success. So at least initially, that's how we plan to start the deployment. So I'll open it up for questions. Anybody that has something I didn't cover.
Steve, you mentioned that hundreds of thousands of these Caterpillar engines are currently in use in cogeneration projects throughout the world. Who primarily does those cogeneration projects that you're aware Caterpillar engines are being used? Is it a single company?
Primarily Caterpillar dealers. Caterpillar manufactures their own generation equipment. I mentioned that we're the only ones that can get a loose engine and make a generator ourselves. So a Caterpillar dealer worldwide, can be Asia, it can be anywhere in the world, they can order up a generator from Caterpillar. It comes complete, and then they can stick build a cogeneration set, or they can stick build a wellhead gas generation, but they're using Caterpillar parts forever. Yeah. We don't use Caterpillar generators. We use Marathon stems. Why? Because they're about 1.5 points more efficient. They have a lot more copper in them. So we don't use the generator stem from Caterpillar. It's actually Leroy Samer and Emerson, and it's kind of a very incestuous business. We don't put our Caterpillar engines in a Caterpillar box because the Caterpillar box is like a drop-over box. And unfortunately, generation is really centered around standby generation, which becomes cost per watt. So Onan, Caterpillar, MTU, they all fight for the hospitals and the universities and the standby market. So they're constantly finding ways to lower the cost in their standby generation products. We make generators that are designed to run continuously, and there's a big difference than a standby generator that's made to run a half hour a month and when a thunderstorm happens. So that, I don't know if I've answered your question. There are many compressor manufacturers you're probably aware of, gas compressors for natural gas. There are many marine applications and many gas engines on rigs, and there are gas engines in many applications. Yeah. Many of the platforms are sometimes with Catalyte generators, so they don't run the standard gas generation products from Caterpillar, and those are built by independent shops that work primarily with the offshore companies. And Catalyte offers a marine generator that's water-cooled that is from a fire and other continuous duty application. It's an excellent application for those sites.
And the reason I asked that question was from an economic is future potential competitors that Blubox might encounter, and that this could be something that would be a very competitive market at its point in time if Obama gets his way, right?
Yes.
Just curious who those people's names, those companies that might be potential competitors.
There's any number of companies. I can't really name any today. There was one in Kentucky. There was one in North Dakota that made a run at it and didn't succeed. The barriers to entry on this market have to be speed. They have to be quality. The utilities are not going to stand for unreliable equipment. If it breaks every week and they have to go on the spot market and pay twice for that, their customers, their ratepayers are going to suffer those woes. Most of these rural electric companies are locally owned, and so the pain will be felt very quickly. They're not large utilities. Yeah, so if they take a hit, their customers are going to feel it the next month. So there are cheaper engines, and there are people that can buy those. Doosan, Guascor from Spain. So we're trying to work this regulatory market, this regulatory angle, to include language in the new environmental regulations that, while you might think I'm a tree hugger by putting some of those in there, we know we...
You are not a tree hugger.
Thank you. We I'm sorry to hear that. There are no trees to hug. There's nothing but a bush about that. You can't even grow a cactus up there. We're trying to craft the language in those regulations to create barriers to market. we want that bar on those environmental regulations.
And regulate bars, barriers to entry, yes.
Yeah, we want to keep that bar really high to keep people from entering. The other thing that really sequesters a lot of those markets is the agreements that Lloyd talked about. Specifically, what he's been able to do with 3 of the utilities, and we hope 9 soon, is to sign up for that 5% capacity. So 3 of the 14 actually, but 3 of the 9 that are really of interest have signed agreements with Blubox, and those agreements sequester 5% of that energy for Blubox to install this equipment. If you read on the internet, you can find, I believe it's an A37 tariff in the state of Colorado, maybe A35. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. 37 or 35. That tariff requires municipal electrical companies, that's your towns, and rural electrical companies, that's those serving rural areas, to buy their power under this tariff. And they can buy it from 2 of the major generators in the state. They are allowed to buy 5% of their energy from alternate sources. The rest they have to buy from those large generating companies. The PUC set that up so that these large companies would be required to provide it, and they would be required to buy it. So it's a quid pro quo. 5% is a huge number, especially in and around Fort Collins and in and around some of these areas that are very populated. As Lloyd said, far more than we could go after. I think then there are natural barriers to market in markets, say, North Dakota. Right now, electricity in North Dakota is so cheap that while the Blubox works technically, it doesn't work economically. So while we're harvesting in Colorado, the obvious next step would be to go to some of these areas of the country and see what you can do about getting rebates and incentives. We don't want to aggravate the oil industry by creating hardships on them. Electricity is very inexpensive in the Dakotas. But what we've been able to do in California and some other states is to work with the public utility commissions to create rebates and incentives that make technologies that clean up the environment viable. I hate that. I personally despise solar and things that I know don't work technically, but when you have a really strong environmental presence opposing this type of technology, you have to find a way to bridge the gap. And sometimes the way to bridge that gap is to offer a solution. And that solution in some states may be to say, here's a technology, it creates a best available control technology dictated by the federal rules, but more importantly, it gives a solution to both sides. And so the PUC starts collecting a tariff on the electricity from all the ratepayers in the state. They create funds and they pay for this type of technology. So I believe that this technology can easily be expanded to other states. I really am opposed to that type of regulation personally, but I see it coming and I see it working. So I see well past the Colorado market, and we're pretty excited about this. Any other questions? Well, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure. Do you want to close up, Lloyd, or we have anyone coming? Oh.
Why aren't the boxes painted blue?
You are not the first person to ask that question.
In Colorado, I was stunned to find this out. In Colorado, there are 2 colors that you can paint wellhead equipment. Either a sand or desert sand color is the way I would describe it, or a pale green, which would look like foliage. And so they're painted tan.
I'll chime in on that. We presented to the Weld County Commissioners 3 or 4 weeks ago, Blubox, and they loved it, but that was their comment. Why don't you paint blue? And their
Paint blue and call it new.
well, their argument was they have some of their maintenance so we told them that our boxes that go into well Caterpillar, we would definitely consider it made in blue. I think it was a good point.
I'm not sure it's gonna maybe get done, but yeah, they were pretty adamant about that position, but, so.
You gotta love the enthusiasm of a regulator when they're so enthusiastic, they're suggesting the colors you should paint the paint pot.
Yeah. Just a couple final items here. Current status of the business. We do have, and just a slight correction on the 3 utilities. We actually have 1 that's signed. We have a real strong commitment on 2 others. This has to go through board approval, which should be done here shortly. So that would certainly, we anticipate that that will be done shortly. That would give us 3 contracts with utilities. We have active conversations with an additional 3 in northern Colorado, High West, High Line, and YW Electric. We will initiate conversations with an additional 3. I consider those 9 utility or 9 co-ops as kind of the first phase of our business, and that's our focus at this point. Certainly, we have other areas in the state, southern Colorado, Walsenburg area, or Cortez area in Colorado, as well as a target that we're going to pursue following our initial placement of some units. And we do have units being built. We do not have anything placed at this point. We hope to have a gas contract within a matter of a few weeks and give us an address that we could place a unit. That would be the initial unit. I think we do have co-ops that have voiced, show me a unit, we'll sign type of attitude, and we certainly are working towards that. As far as financials, Mr. Neville Pearson is does all the financial work for the company. Neville, I've been really impressed with Neville. He's from England. You can't help but pick up that English accent. He is real meticulous about his work. He is also conservative. We do have copies of 10-year projections if you want to work through some of those issues. And back to your question on accelerated depreciation, I believe Neville would say yes, it would qualify for accelerated depreciation. So.
Is there capacity within the organization that you could pass that through to investors, do you know?
I can't answer that. I know what you're talking about. I mean, similar to some oil and gas investments, you can certainly claim that. I don't know. I can't answer that question for you. I'll find out, certainly. I guess at this point we're looking for capital. This is capital-intensive business. We're looking for investors that would partner with us. We do have a private placement memorandum that has been in place for a number of months now, which we are working that as well. We also are working with local representative. Jared Barkey represents Esposito Securities, located here in Dallas. And he's going to formally launch his program tomorrow. And he'd be more than happy to visit with you, any of you, about investments there as well. Bottom line, we're real excited about the opportunities that we have before us. The technology, there's nothing new about the technology. The burning of natural gas, driving a generator has been around for years. What really makes this work is the current market conditions, the large number of drilling operations, continuing drilling in Colorado, the mandate from the state that local co-ops buy 5% of their utilities if available from local. That certainly is in our favor as well. And we feel strongly that some of the regulatory policies and that are being talked about now will be real favorable to us as well. We haven't touched on necessarily the renewable aspect. There's some indication that we might be considered renewable, or we could augment those systems to become renewable and to some degree. So with that said, I don't know if there's any other questions, comments to anybody.
What do you grow on your farm?
Corn and wheat, pinto beans. So, yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. That was an easy question. Anything else? I do want to thank Tom for all of his work in organizing this, and feel free to stick around and ask any questions. I know Lloyd is maybe talk about the oil project, the Windsor 14, if anybody's interested in looking at the opportunities there. We're certainly, Lloyd can answer those questions. So again, thank you for coming and your participation, and please contact us if you have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.